Okay, 1 second. It's going to do its thing. Hmm. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Startup Grind Boston's Fireside Chat, Building Fearless Learners with Priyanka Raha, founder and CEO of PopSmart Academy. We're going to be having a wonderful conversation today about all kinds of interesting and amazing things. But before we get started, I just want to remind everybody once again, yep, this is Startup Grind Boston, one of the friendliest startup communities in all of the Boston and New England area. And we host these fireside chats with leaders and luminaries and people all over the innovation space to understand from them what their journey has been like and what insights they have to offer, and in many cases, what we can look forward to from what they have planned. So, for context, I'm Steve Vilkus, so I am the co director of Startup Grind Boston, and I've been a member since, oh gosh, about 2017, 2018. I met Jason, and then we started building together along with a few other folks, and we are building our chapter here, doing amazing things in the Boston area. We have a great summer soiree coming up next week on the 26th. But without further ado, I want to turn to the lady herself and have Priyanka give an introduction, who she is, what she's all about, and then we'll get started right here at the fireside. After you, Priyanka.
Thank you so much, Steve. Hello, everybody. I'm thrilled to be here, and thank you for having me on this chat. My name is Priyanka Raha. I'm the founder and CEO of PopSmart Academy. PopSmart Academy today is an after-school enrichment program that provides classes and programs in writing, science, public speaking, and entrepreneurship to students in elementary, middle, and high. Outside of working on my company, I love working with fellow entrepreneurs. I get excited by new ideas. And as much as possible, I try to help and tell them about the things that they probably should not be doing or some things that has worked for me. So this is very exciting, and diving into that. I live in Seattle, and I there are a few other things that really excites me. Like I love reading, I love long bike rides, and I love dancing.
I love reading. Um, Bike riding, yeah. Dancing, I need to get back into dancing, but great to have you here as well. I'm seeing a lot of folks joining. So we got Jamie, we have Rutendo, we have Jerry. So now that we have some folks here too, let me just explain how this is going to work. So as most of you know how a fireside chat is, me and Priyanka are going to talk about a few things, and then after that's done, and if you want to put your questions in the chat, you can do that. But after that's done, we'll open it up to you, all of you, in case you have any questions for Priyanka herself or questions about Pop Smart Academy, which I have a very special place in my heart. So yeah, let's get started. Alrighty. So getting started here. Priyanka, I know you probably see this one coming from a million miles away because again you work with founders as well, and I know that you're also very curious about how they got started, like basically what their origin story is and how that origin story, inextricably points or inevitably points to the North Star. I would love to know how you got started. Take us back to those times. We'll go in the time machine and then we'd love to hear it.
I love the time machine reference. Absolutely. So, like I was mentioning, Pop Smart Academy today, in its current form, is an after-school enrichment program for students in elementary, middle, and high. It went through something like a pivot, which all startup founders are very familiar with, around the time that pandemic hit us. So I was working on a different startup before this. I come from a tech background, and I always wanted to, and I'm a builder at heart. I'm an engineer at heart. I'm also a science geek. So I always wanted to build something that would help children tell stories, but using technology in a way to assist that. Because besides being a science geek, I also love telling stories, which is, I think, true for all human beings. We all love stories. So I was actually working on an app, which was a story writing app. And during the pandemic, I had to go through a pivot, which was very organic because what I was trying to do is I was trying to fill a gap, which I saw around the pandemic where students were stuck inside their homes And more than learning or education, they were actually looking for connection. So what started as just a Zoom call, my younger son, who had just started kindergarten, so he was actually 6 months into the kindergarten school, and then everything shut down. So I got all of the students together, his friends, just get on a Zoom call and tell each other stories. And I was facilitating that. I would kind of assist and help them with writing, give them some writing prompts. And we did that for a few months. And after that, we stopped for a bit, and parents reached out and said, "Oh, are you going to offer those?" And they started calling it writing classes, which, I mean, this was all free. This was just pro bono. As a mother, I was trying to as a mother and kind of coming from that entrepreneurial background, I really wanted to do something to fill that gap. So that kind of stuck. And what started as writing classes online kind of turned into slowly building three in-person center in the greater Seattle area, and expanding from just being writing classes to science, public speaking, and entrepreneurship. So there you go. That's the origin story.
That is the origin story. And I think it should come as no surprise to you and to those folks who are here who know me that the key word that you use that I absolutely love is connection. Because I also remember back during the pandemic when I was working in pandemic response related initiatives, that is the one thing that people were craving. They were craving access to real information about how to stay safe, but they were also craving connection with their fellow humans, and especially. I have a friend based here in Boston who takes people around on tours of like areas around Boston, and she has two sons and a daughter, and basically during the pandemic she started teaching them so many things from home, and then she started connecting with other parents as well. So this pattern, kind of a good thing arising out of a not so good thing, is very awesome. And you also mentioned like the word pivot. I know this is, as I said, we're going to have some random questions too, and I know you're up for the task. Like, how have you, like, over time, like how have you dealt with pivots? Because as you know, entrepreneurs must grapple with pivots. It's a necessary part of staying alive in the startup world. Has your relationship to pivots changed in any way? I mean, have you always been comfortable with it? Would love to learn about that too.
Yes, I have been. That's a short answer, but I'll also kind of add to that. I'm a very curious person by nature. I love kind of seeing things, observing things around me. So one of the things that I have done in my career as well is so I was mentioning I'm a science geek. I started my career as an engineer. I worked in several different industries and several different roles. There is always a common thread, but there has always been these changes. And this is before even I jumped onto the startup bandwagon, right? Like this is before the entrepreneurial journey. So I was always very curious and kind of notice things that would challenge me. So I always feel that uh, we must deal with everything. We must deal everything with the Pareto's principle at heart, which is the 80-20 principle. So 80% of it should feel like, okay, this is great. I'm comfortable. I know this stuff. But then that 20% should always be, oh, this is challenging. I have no idea how to do this, but this is exciting. Let's do this. So I have really kind of looked at my career and navigated that the same way. I have had multiple roles. After engineering, I worked and then went on to earn my master's in business administration, which for many would feel like a pivot as well. I have also lived and worked in 14 different cities across 3 continents. So you might call that a pivot as well. So I've moved around a lot. But kind of coming back to your question, in the entrepreneurial journey, I think pivot is really important because you're starting something new. So we all start something new with a very educated assumption. It's not really assumption. So, it's not pure guess. You have a prior knowledge, but you start with some assumption, which is educated based on your own ideas and your knowledge. But at the same time, it is kind of an assumption. So you have to keep your minds open about learning as you go. Be it completely, now the pivot that I was talking about was a complete pivot from being a product-based company to a service-based one. But the pivot can also be within the same kind of product or service you are offering to who you are serving, changing that customer, constantly listening to what customers are telling you. And even with the service-based programs that we run today, there is always change. There is always things that we are learning, and we are changing the way we offer these programs. So it is extremely integral to have that pivot. But I wouldn't say it comes easy, but I would say that I'm by nature a very curious person. So I kind of enjoy it.
Yeah, it sounds like curiosity is really the bedrock of so many things. I know for both of us, because as I said to many people over the past couple of months, like my introduction to radical curiosity and to the principle of curiosity has really been very helpful for me as an entrepreneur, as an operator in this space, because traditionally I was not a fan of change. I was very hesitant. I was very avoidant about change. But as you said, we have to learn how to deal with these things, and I think approaching things with a curious mindset is exactly the thing to do to defeat those limiting beliefs. And one of the questions that I was most excited to ask you about when we gathered here today is quite simply, what has surprised you most during this building journey with PopSmart? Say, for example, something that you didn't quite understand when you started and that now you understand it. Like, what have been some of, like, the most surprising learning, learning things?
That's a great question. What has surprised me? And this is again uh, kind of rooted in why I started this as well. What has surprised me is that uh, I think the slow disappearance of curiosity and observation. So I'll give you a story uh, to explain that. So I was teaching a science class, and I had this curriculum. I had these questions in mind, and I kind of always start these classes with asking questions and having the students observe things around them. So I was in a classroom. We had windows, and I was going to teach them about cells in our bodies. I was going to teach them about animal and plant cell. But before I dove into all of the scientific terms and everything else, I simply asked them a question about the difference between plants and animals. And somehow they were trying to give me answers about the difference between the plant cell and the animal cell. Now, let me remind you that I hadn't introduced them to the idea. I simply came into the class and I asked them, what do you see? And the question was formed this way, like, what do you see when you see plants and animals? Or when you look at plants and when you look at yourself, what difference do you see? I kept, and they then all went, oh, I know this. I have read about this. I have watched this on a YouTube video. And I kept bringing them back. I was like, don't go there. Look outside the window. Try to see what you're seeing and tell me. And I, of course, like there's always a couple of students, or maybe at least one in a classroom, who are the quieter ones, and I love them. And they will slowly raise their hand. And so one student like that, she raised her hand and she was like, they're green, we're not. I was like, fantastic. So I think that's something that is changing today than what it was before. I think students have information. There is no dearth of information. It's in the palm of our hands, right? So students in fifth grade or sixth grade, seventh grade, they have access to multiple devices. They can search up things. They can learn about them. They have all these information. But I think they come to class to make sense of that information, to connect the dots. I do not want students to come and just um, give out all the things that they have, list out the 5 differences or the 5 things. I want them to look around and observe. And I think that has been, that's a shift that I'm seeing. And that's something that I also try to incorporate in my programs to kind of keep them kind of building on that observational skills to look around, to
Mm.
find what they're observing, not just becoming a receiver of information,
Yeah,
because students come to class to make sense of it, not for information. Information is ubiquitous today.
it is. Information is everywhere. And, this brought to mind when I was a kid. I went to school, and, for some of my teachers, I really feel that the thing was about memorization. Like, you have to memorize things. And then for other teachers, it was about not only knowing things, but understanding things. But with my mother, with my late mother, the thing was not only knowing, not only understanding, but appreciating the value behind what it is that you're like observing, what it is that you're taking in. So, for example, and she also loved trees. Like, we're walking through like Boston Common, and she sees like the familiar weeping willows near the Charles River, and she goes up to one and she tells me, "Come on, come over here, and I want to show you something." That when you were talking, that is what I was also thinking about, that deliberate invitation to discovery, to like not just like somebody asks you something, it's like, oh, let me search it up on my phone. It's like going out there and really appreciating life and all the many things that it has to teach us. A little bit of Phil bro there for you, a little bit of philosophy bro, but that's okay. It had to come out eventually. um we have so much to talk about, I swear. I would say one of the things that I've actually been meaning to ask you, I mean, not just in this fireside chat, but I mean, of course, offline, is like, when you look ahead, when Priyanka looks ahead to the future of PopSmart, this is a very big question, and what would you ultimately like want it to become or see it becoming, in the future, and what impact? Because I know you're all about the impact too, but like, what impact would you want it to have as we move forward into the future?
That's yeah, that is definitely a big
Only easy
question.
questions from Steve.
Only easy questions. No, no, like I said, 80, the 80-20 rule, right? So if I'm not challenged, I think we all love feeling challenged. But it is a big question. And as an entrepreneur, as someone who has been running this company, I think about that quite a lot. And to me, so there are a few different facets of the question. So I'll talk about impact just a little bit. To me, impact is not um, 20,000 students, 10,000 students. Those are great. I'm not saying I don't want that. To me, impact is more, have I changed one person's or one student? Have I helped one student improve their understanding? So that to me is impact. And going back to kind of keeping that as my North Star, yes, I want to um, make sure that that impact is there. When students and parents or families, they come to PopSmart Academy, the way I want them to see is a place that I or other instructors, we as a whole, we can help students succeed. And I'll explain that a little bit, because success gets a bad rep in terms of, and this is something, when I ask students as well, success, they always say in terms of awards, grades, and those are fantastic. But I think making sense of making them understand. So that's what succeed is. I see PopSmart Academy as a place where we really work and help students succeed. And I will tell this because I always go back, and this is again comes from learning, constantly learning from, and I always directly go to the customers and the users, and they're different for me because they are. But more on that later. So I did ask, actually, I do ask my students, is like, what was helpful? Because sometimes they'll say, oh, that makes sense, that was helpful. And then I'll go back and ask them, like, what was helpful? So I would actually love to share something that one of the students shared with me. He said that he wasn't able to make sense of AP biology before he came to the class, and now it makes sense. And then he was able to understand. He did not sit in front of a book when he was reading, or he did not sit in front of a question paper and feel like none of it is, like, everything feels alien. He was able to go back to his regular class, and we are after school enrichment classes, right? So which means students do go back to their regular classes in school, and they are kind of learning the same concept or getting introduced to the same concept, maybe a little bit faster because there isn't enough time. But he told me that he was able to make sense. He understood everything, and that's helpful, and that's impact, and that to me is a place that I see PopSmart Academy becoming, to make sense of that, to succeed. That towards we work towards making students succeed. We help them succeed.
Yeah. What that brings to mind for me is, and I wrote about this, as you know, one of the investments that my mom made in me was when she saw that I love to learn, she set me up with so much like extracurricular enrichment. But I also struggled quite a bit when I was younger with mathematics. And the reason why is because, and we've touched on this multiple times throughout the fireside chat, I memorized numbers. I memorized, like, how to do addition, subtraction, multiplication. My struggle was, and maybe this is because I'm artistic or whatever, is, I didn't understand exactly what it all meant. Like, what is the greater meaning behind that? So what my mom did is she actually found me someone quite like yourself. His name was Mr. Fox. He used to spend time with me every single day after school, and I had severe anxiety when it came to taking standardized exams. And one of them, which I know Jerry and others might be familiar with here in Massachusetts, is the MCAS. I had to take that when I was a kid, and the big portion was mathematics because he focused on wanting me to succeed. Because my big thing was like, oh, like I just numbers. I keep freezing. I keep not wanting to do this. Because he set my sights on success and he invested in me and my mother invested in me, now, as you know, I mean, I'm totally comfortable with mathematics. So it really does matter. And I think I think your definition of success and where you see PopSmart going is a metric that matters. Because something else that you said that I just want to touch on is, I think a lot of times, and founders face various amounts of pressure because of this. Like, they feel like vanity metrics simply must be promoted, like, because they want people to take them seriously and they want investors or other customers to like take them seriously. So like, oh, I want to have a million this, I want to have a billion that. But I love how you were very precise and intentional with that. My next question would be quite simply, and I think this is a fun one too. So you are so many things. I mean, you're not just, like you said, an entrepreneur, you're also an educator. I mean, this is a very Priyanka coded question. How has being like both an entrepreneur and an educator shaped the way that you specifically lead, like PopSmart? Like, how has that made your leadership style, or maybe the way you think about leadership, unique?
I think it's kind of getting pulled into, I would say, completely opposite directions at times. I'll start with I'll start with two examples. So while I was answering your previous question, I know I was talking about customers and users. So we have to constantly balance that, because our customers are the people who are paying us, and those are the parents. So they are looking for success in metrics that are a little different. So they're looking for, okay, this is the grade that I want. These are the competitions that my child needs to get in and wants to be successful. And I understand that. I'm a mother myself. I have two kids. So I understand that. But those are our customers. But then there are also users. So the users are our students, and you have to make it fun. It cannot be an hour of just our instructors kind of teaching. I wouldn't say even teaching, like instructors just standing there and giving them lectures. Then they would might as well sit at home and watch a YouTube video. So how do we differentiate? How do we create that space where there is there is opportunity for that, right? So that's a constant pull that I always, those are one of the things that is challenging, but also really fun to work with. Kind of creating a space where they feel they want to come in, but also giving them tools and helping them succeed through a really fun program is exciting, and it works for the most part, right? The other pull that I have most of the time is growth, right? As entrepreneurs, as leaders, we want to grow. We want to show that our numbers have increased, whether it's revenue or number of customers. That is, it is like it follows a hockey stick, right? And I have to be very thoughtful about that. There are certain, so as an educator, you asked, like, as an educator and an entrepreneur, like how those two inform my decisions. So as an educator and a mother, my mission, the values that I believe in are very clear to me. I want students to get inspired. I want students to want to come back, which I'm very thrilled to share that students actually come to our classes and don't want to leave. Like after an hour, we have to literally tell them, like, go, your parents are waiting, which I have so much fun with, right? But that also means that most of the times our growth rates are not a hockey stick, because we are very intentional about what programs we are offering. And that therein comes like the entrepreneurial side of things, which is like, okay, we have to grow. How do we make sure that we keep our values in mind and then grow? So I would say that's challenging, but that also sets us apart. I think that's our moat in a way.
I've seen with you that challenges are opportunities to be met. You like challenges, you really do, including dealing with me sometimes. But that's not the story for another day. So, and one thing that I wanted to ask you, because I know that we've spoken about this, whether to other founders or even between ourselves, is that the hidden world that a lot of people don't see when it comes to the life of a startup founder. Like, there are assumptions that are still being made, unfortunately, out there in the wider world, that it's all fun. Like, you make your own hours and you're your own boss and all this stuff that frankly is just not true. So my question specifically is, what has been the hardest part of the founder journey that people, again, on the outside rarely see? If you wouldn't mind sharing.
Oh, absolutely. And I think I'm assuming most of the people who are here, or all of the people who are here, and most of the people who will get to hear this, they will relate to this, because they are either active founders right now or have gone through that journey at some point. I think a couple of things, and one of those you actually already mentioned, which is the assumption, right? So we have to constantly kind of fight the assumption. And I'll tell you a story about that. You must know this by now, that I love stories, like I was mentioning in the beginning. So we had, and this again comes to being very intentional. We're very intentional about our marketing as well. We love actually being in the community and making those true connections. So our favorite ways of actually reaching people are going out there in the community, having pop-up booths, and really talking to parents and families, and having students come or children come and really enjoy all of the, so we carry our science equipments and little things. So we have them play around with it. So yesterday we were actually at a pop-up booth, and I met someone, and she told me that, so this is just an example, right? And this is something that we have to fight with, and it's okay. I think as entrepreneurs, we have to be okay with things like this. So she was mentioning that she works at a really well-known company, and that's great. But she was mentioning me how it has been very busy, which I understand. Of course, it's been like with the current work environment right now for everybody, it's been very, very challenging, very, very anxious, right? Everybody's anxious. So she was mentioning, and then she told me that there are times I just say, let's quit all of this and let's start our own business. We then don't have to worry about these things. We can be just at home and enjoy our time a little bit. And I was thinking, you are seeing me at 8:30 in the 8:30 p.m. at night and carrying like a bunch of stuff, all of the things that we have to carry to set up the pop-up booth with one of my staff members, and we're lugging everything. What part of this feels like this is not hard work? So we have to as founders, I think everybody will relate. We have to kind of be okay with that. Be okay with people saying those things. And then I think there is the other aspect of it, right? So if anyone has made a transition like me from corporate to the startup world, the thing that immediately hits you is that you have to be extremely creative about how you use your resources. And that includes time and money. It doesn't matter how mission driven you are, how your goal, it's very North Star, it's you're making a change in the world. At the end of the day, you have to watch your financials. You have to make sure that you are you are able to support everybody who is working in the company. You're able to support the programs you're offering at the company. So what that means is that you are constantly thinking about how you can work with very creatively, with very minimalistic approach, and how you can work on all the things that you need to work on with very limited resources. And then, of course, finally, there's the different hats that founders wear, right? So in a well-managed corporate world, you have different people working on different things, which kind of aligns with their skill sets. But here, you're everything. At some point, you are operations. At some point, you're product. At some point, you are actually an educator in the class. At
I've
some
seen this
point,
with you during the course of any given day. Literally, you are everybody in the company. Exactly.
and that's kind of a true story for all founders. We have to, at least when we are in the initial stages, for sure, when we are trying to build and grow. So yeah.
Yeah, I think, when I first became a founder, my assumption was that because, to your point, I am solving a real problem, I know what I'm doing, I'm going to be so successful, and then the reality sinks in that this is definitely a voyage of discovery and at times also curiosity, but also adversity. Like there's a lot of challenges, there are a lot of headwinds that you have to face. And
Yeah.
sometimes, I think, especially nowadays, I'm very much encouraged by the new crop, the new generation of founders that we've been working with because they seem to really understand this well. They're very not brutal in a bad way, but they're very good with their time management. They're very
Mm.
good with their resource allocation, because I think there's also been a shift in the ecosystem mentality that just go and try and get some investment, because that's another thing too. People assume that is super easy when it is most definitely not easy. So yeah, and what I would come to now, believe it or not, is actually I do have some more questions, but we got a really really good one in the chat, so I want to get to that. So I want to say, so Hepzibah, if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly, please feel free to correct me. I'm very adamant about that. But Hepzibah asks, if you are creating a product, Priyanka, that is based on teaching, how would you go about keeping them, I would say like the target audience, I'm going to infer that means target audience, like engaged and interested so they don't abandon it?
Yeah. Absolutely. So I think um, I think it's a little different now what I do, because it is not so much as a product, but more of a service. But I think the same principles apply. Is letting them create. Um, they have to do things. Just I think students or young learners actually love building and doing things. Most of the time they do not actually, and this is something that I have learned over the course of several years with my kids, with working with students. They actually love asking questions. They love thinking outside the box, and just kind of saying them that, oh, this is not possible, is telling them that this is not interesting, like your question is not interesting, what you're trying to do is not interesting. So kind of falling back, I'm trying to keep it aligned to, because you mentioned, Hepzibah, that you're working on a product. So I'm thinking like it's something that you're building. So helping them create, keeping them engaged and interested. So they are, and the one of the ways to do that is to letting them create multiple different things. So a little more information could be helpful, but I'm going to give you examples of, like, let's assume for a second it's not a tech product, right? And it could be a tech product, but if you're even thinking about blocks, so letting them create, and if you are trying to encourage them to keep using it, some of the things to do. And I know this kind of falls a little bit into marketing, but you can have them take those pictures and send and say, the new things that you have created, that does not look like what was referenced. I'll give you an example. So when you buy a Lego set, it tells you like, this Lego set will create a spaceship for you. But you can use the same Lego sets, to the same ones, to create something very, very different. So kind of pushing them in that direction and saying, like, you can create more. How about you show us what you can create? So hopefully that was helpful.
Dare I say it, but it sounds like you're trying to get people to be curious yet again. That's what it sounds like to me. I have two questions saved in my back pocket, and we'll see if anybody else in the studio audience wants to, ask you things. And these are very nice ones, that mean a lot to me. So, we've been talking about them, the users, all fireside chat long, our curious learners. What have the children that you've taught, like, what have they taught you about how they actually learn? I think you touched on this a little bit, but I'd love for you to tell us more, because I think that it's a very, very, it's a very interesting way to learn ourselves from them.
Absolutely. They are my biggest teachers. So I'll give two examples, and one is about content, what I teach, and one is about kind of direct feedback. So when we think about feedback, we as entrepreneurs, we're thinking about feedback from customers, right? So this is very similar to that. So I would sometimes ask the students in the classroom, because I could ask parents, and I do ask parents, but I think the real feedback about what we are doing in the classroom should come from the students, because that's helpful. That helps us improve. I use, if it's a difficult science concept, and I'm just because I'm such a science geek at heart, I'm kind of always picking out examples from the science classroom. But if I'm teaching a difficult concept in science, I will tie it back to something else. I'll use analogies. I was told by a student that makes it confusing. I should just straight keep at the content and keep teaching them, repeating them, and that will be helpful. Because in this case, it's almost like they're trying to understand the concept I'm teaching, and at the same time, they're trying to understand this different story that I'm trying to tell them, and equating it to what they're learning. So I think that is great, right? So that's where they are our teachers. The other thing is, students have really, and I know we have talked about curiosity. I think this would be a good time to also mention, I'm so passionate about it. I'm actually writing a book about it, centered around curiosity. But coming back to students and young learners being my teachers, they really help me stay curious. And I'll give you another example. So we were learning about xylem and phloem, these two different kinds of tissues inside plants that help gather water from the soil up to the leaves, and then gather the food from the leaves to all parts of the plant. They have very different functions. They look very different. And students always ask different questions. So that's one of the things we try to do, is like we stay open for those questions. But we also have to walk a tightrope balance, because sometimes we don't have time for those questions. One of the students asked, like, what happens if we just switch them? If xylem becomes phloem and phloem becomes xylem, I think there was a possibility to say, well, that's not possible. Or if you switch them, then they just switch their functions. They do what the other uh, tissue was supposed to do. Instead, I encourage them to write a one-page kind of their thoughts and opinions on it. And I told them, and it's actually on our website. I told them everyone who submits that one-page description of like what happens when it switches, I will publish it on the website as part of a blog. And I did. And what came out was things that led to more discussions, more deeper conversations about how cells can change, mutation, and all the advanced topics. So coming back to that, I think two things. One is that what I think in my head is the best way to learn may not be the best way to learn for the students who are at the receiving end of it. So listening to them and not dismissing them, because the feedback that came about like how I was teaching was from a seventh grader. And one of the things I am very, very sure about is that I never treat students as, oh, what do you know? To me, they are fully formed human beings. To me, their ideas and their opinions matter. So I think that's one thing they teach me, and the other thing is definitely like thinking outside the box. I would have never all the ideas that came from the students in the classroom about xylem and phloem, I would have not thought about it, at least a few of them. So they're constantly keeping me on my toes.
Yes. Oh, they are. And I am as well. I'm a big kid at heart. But so, I mean, one of the most important questions that I wanted to tackle with you today before we take it to the audience is it is that ultimate question. So let's assume that a parent encounters PopSmart for the very first time today, tomorrow. Like, what do you hope they immediately understand about you as its, fearless founder, but also about the company itself, about, PopSmart Academy? Like, what do you want the parents to understand, like, right away with all that clarity?
I think I'll go back to uh, something that we were discussing very early on, which is um, why do students come back, or how do students see PopSmart Academy? I think it's the same thing. I want parents to see us as a place where students can learn and want to return to learn, because learning is a constant thing. I don't ever want students to be here for 2-3 classes and they're like, this is not making sense. So I want this place to be something that they come to learn and they return to learn. I want parents to feel that this is where I want students to fall in love with the content that they're learning. And I say this with respect to all the programs I offer, right? So if you think about writing, they're also so distributed. So if you think about writing, okay, and then we have STEM, science, all the disciplines of science, right? Physics, chemistry, biology. Then there is public speaking. Then there is entrepreneurship. Is there a connection between all this? There absolutely is. But at the same time, I want students who are coming to PopSmart Academy, or parents who are sending them here, to be excited about learning, just learning either one of these and making sense of it, because we learn things so we can make sense of the world around us, be it writing, be it public speaking, be it any particular concept of science. So I want parents to see it that way.
I know you do. And just using myself as an example before we pivoted over to the audience, like, I always say this jokingly, that my mom would be the ultimate like champion of Pop Smart Academy because of one thing in particular. That is what she wanted for me, which is what you said. And you encapsulated it really well. That's why I put it in the chat. A want to return to learn. Because she saw that I had that locked inside me, this love of learning. And I feel that it's something that it's not just about like, hey, you need to memorize this thing so that you can get to this goal. It's that you should fall in love with and develop a lifelong affinity with learning because it is just so amazing. So, with that, I want to turn to our amazing audience. We have lots and lots of people here, and we have just about 10 minutes left or so. So, feel free to ask Priyanka any questions that happen to be on your mind, and I'll be here to help moderate. Let's see if we've got anybody in the chat. Yeah, if you want to put your questions in the chat, you can also do that. You know, and again, as a reminder, this is Startup Grind Boston's fireside chat. We're going to be doing these every month. Yeah, Jamie, did you want to ask a question of Priyanka? I know you were the first to join, and you seemed like, yeah, anything on your mind? There you go.
I don't have anything on my mind.
Okay.
I do appreciate the conversation, and
Awesome.
just if anything comes to me, I will let you know.
I like it. All right. Awesome. So what we'll do in the meantime, just before we close up, I will pull one more question out of my back pocket. So let's see here. Um, yeah,
I
I would
love.
ask. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Priyanka. Yeah.
Do you go by Jerry? I'm supposed. I see your name as Gerald, or do you go by Jerry? No,
Peace,
no.
Jerry's
I
good.
see. I'm not calling on you, but I also want to kind of mention that fundraising is hard about
Oh,
conflicting thoughts about what should be on the pitch deck. So just one quick line about it. So I think the pitch deck should contain things that, depending on who your audience is, sometimes your audience is you're just presenting it to customers, then it should be very different. But if you're fundraising, then to the investors, so there should be different things on the pitch deck. That's just quick,
solid goal
quick
advice.
thing.
Can't resist the opportunity to teach, can you? So it's amazing. It's just a thing, right? So no, I feel the same way about pitch decks. I also feel that actually it goes back to one of the things we first talked about in terms of the prevalence, the proliferation of information. I think in terms of like startup education, there is just so much stuff out there, and it's very hard sometimes to tell what makes sense and what's credible from what is just basically noise. And something that I always tell founders in my capacity as the co-director of Startup Grind Boston is like, you know, when you go on LinkedIn, just be very careful. Like, when you're doing your diligence on trying to like pick up resources, pick up connections, because that person is saying to you, for example, hey, if you pay me thousands of dollars, I'll make it a world class pitch deck. I'll get $100 million tomorrow. No. Or even the person that says like, hey, I have an investor list of like 500 investors. If you just type the word banana, that's a dead Excel file. There's nothing going on there. There's nothing you want there. Leave it alone. But yeah, I think we've come to the end of it today. I just want to say again a huge thank you to Priyanka for gracing the stage of Startup Grind Boston, and I actually wanted to give you an opportunity, Priyanka. I know that there's a lot going on at PopSmart right now, so why don't you walk us through like, are there any like upcoming opportunities, things that folks should know as they start to explore what's happening?
Well, connect with us, follow us. So we usually are very active on LinkedIn and Instagram. You can follow us as, oh, that's a great question, Zanda. Sorry if I'm not saying that correctly. But yeah, I can type our handle. So connect. So that would be, so we are on Instagram as PopSmart Academy, and we are on LinkedIn as well as PopSmart Learning Academy. So connect with us, visit our website, popsmartacademy.com. And if you're talking about partnerships and things like that, definitely reach out to me. Always happy to hop on a call and discuss further.
Yeah, I can verify that. That's definitely true. Um, yeah, so also parting words of wisdom here. Finding fundraising is like playing a lottery game, except you're the one looking for players. True. That is true. Priyanka, it has been an absolute pleasure and a joy. Thank you for being with me for my very first fireside chat of my entire life here at Startup Grind. So I can't wait for us to have many more conversations, and you're a member of our community. For those of you who will be watching this, in the future, again, Startup Grind Boston is here for you as a resource. PopSmart Academy, one of the best startups out there, and we will catch you soon. Thank you very much for joining, and yeah, have a good day, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.